Recognize the background. It's different than my normal studios because I am in Ocala at a bed and breakfast where I'm really enjoying my stay tonight, broadcasting from this location on East Fort King, a beautiful place and a beautiful town. It's going to be a good night. We've got lots of information, but some bad news for the Gator football team. Just can't seem to catch a break when it comes to things like injuries. Another one tonight that you didn't see coming. But on the other hand, when can Billy Napier ever get a break? So tonight on the program, we're featuring Carlton Reese, a very fine writer who will join us early on for a few minutes to size up the question. The 12 picked by the college football committee. You look at the list and see Carlton will join us. We'll be followed by Kevin Brockway, the Gainesville son. He'll give us his take on this week's practice, the injury report, etc. And then Peek-Wilbur, normally on at 9 o'clock, will be on at 9:30 to talk LSU, Florida. LSU, Florida, which I think has become, if not the number one rivalry for Florida, it's certainly right there with Georgia. I'll tell you why. All that coming your way tonight, right here from the Blue Heron Bed and Breakfast in Ocala. I'm Buddy Martin. The program is called The Buddy Martin Show. Come hang around for a while and join us when we talk a little college football and Gator sports and Gator football right here on this channel. Tell your friends and neighbors the Buddy Martin Show is almost on the air. Here we come. Stand by. We're getting there. Gonna find our open here. Where are you? Beautiful day in Ocala today. I thought, man, what a beautiful place to be. Gorgeous day in the city that I love so much. I was born and raised in. Great place.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening and welcome to the program. I'm Buddy Martin. This is the Buddy Martin Show tonight, coming to you from beautiful Ocala in the Fort King area. I'll be joined just about 30 seconds with my good friend, outstanding writer, Carlton Reese. If you haven't been reading Carlton's columns on Gator Bait, you're missing out. He'll always have one there during the football season, sometimes on Saturday. So with no further ado, before we tell you about the injury report, more bad news. I mean, can a guy get any breaks at all here? Another starter lost on defense for Billy Napier. I don't know. I guess when it's not your day, it's not your day, not your season. Granted, he hasn't coached well sometime, but he can't keep doing this. Can't catch a break, Carlton Reese. Good evening to you.
If he didn't have bad luck, I guess he'd have no luck at all. I hate to use a cliche like that, but
yeah,
what it sounds like.
The starter is on defense is Pup Howard, who's played really well at linebacker, a young player. They've lost him. The good news is that DJ Lagway is at least questionable now, and the reports we're getting in the columns that we read, especially Franz Beards, say he's trending upward. And if we can make a projection, which is always a difficult, bad idea to do when you talk about an injury, it sounds like he's trending upward. I would expect, knowing what little I know, he'll see the field this week because they sure need it. LSU, which has lost 2 games in a row. I don't think Brian Kelly's lost 3 games in a row at LSU. On the other hand, I'm not so thrilled about Brian Kelly. I don't think he's all that in the bag of chips. He's getting $9 million, $10 million a year. and he's not going to make a championship round this year. So give us your thoughts about it. I know you looked at the top 12 and whatever. Give us your thoughts about the injury report. Hopefully you won't freeze up. And what do you think?
Well, as far as the injuries go, I mean, honestly, if DJ Lagway doesn't play, I don't really want to see this team play. There's just not much there. There's not much juice there without DJ. I think he's going to play, though. I mean, from what I'm hearing from the reports, he's probably going to play. He's not going to run. They're probably not going to call any running plays, which seems like that's what works against LSU. But if they're not going to call running plays, he's going to have to do things on his own. But an athlete like that, buddy, he's going to run, whether you design something for him or not. It's kind of what his instincts do, and that takes over in a game. So if he plays, his best aspect is his throwing, but his legs can really be dangerous against a team like LSU, and I think he's probably going to take advantage of it. I hope he plays. I hope he's significant. If he plays and one of those other guys gets in the lineup too, I think they've got a shot at beating LSU. Without Lagway, I see no chance.
All right, we're having a difficult time. Your audio is good, but your video keeps breaking up and freezing. But we're going to go with it for the next few minutes because we want to get your thoughts on the screen. Topic du jour. This is from Todd Sullivan, Charles Todd Sullivan, for president 2024. I must have missed his presidency. Anyway, he says there's only about 3 teams legitimate shot to win the title. At least 8 teams have no business in the playoff. 12 teams is an absurd system. What part of that do you agree with? What part do you disagree with?
It changes every year, buddy. I mean, even when there were years when it was always 2 teams to go, and it seemed like there was one team just way better than everybody else. And other years, it seemed like there were 7 teams that you could say. It just changes every year. This year's one of those years that, the comment there says 3 teams with a legitimate shot to win the title. I think it's probably more than that because I'm not really that impressed with any of the teams that stand head and shoulders above everyone. I look at the top, Oregon. I think Oregon's a very beatable team. They've played a weak schedule. Boise State should have beat them. Ohio State's a beatable team, has been beaten. Look at what Georgia is now, and in Alabama. Every team looks very beatable to me. So it's hard to predict who's going to come out of this or who deserves to be there and who doesn't. I've never been too crazy personally about a big, long national playoff. I think, to me, I'm old school. I think college football is the beauty is in the regional rivalries and things like that. And they've already taken Auburn from Florida, and they mess with Texas A&M over the years. I've never liked that, but I would say if you want to say who has no chance, Tennessee's got no chance. Not with that quarterback. Other teams I like to look at are the teams that are going to sneak in there. You look at the top 12 right now, it's going to be completely different come playoff time. So people looking at the brackets, I think is not worth it.
Right. As we look at this, and I've got in front of me, I wish I could put it on the screen, the 12 teams, as we look at it. And one thing I know, it's changed every week. Ole Miss Sunday's back in the forefront, even with 2 losses. They look like the best team. Can they get there? Well, they don't have to get to the SEC championship game. They can still have maybe a better shot not doing that. When I'm looking at the list, I'm going to read them off here. Number 1, Oregon. Number 2, Ohio State. 3, Texas. 4, Penn State.
No chance.
Indiana, 5. They're the kind of the Cinderella team.
Yeah.
BYU is a better team than people. I watched that BYU Holy War with Utah. That was a heck of a football game, and BYU is scrappy. Tennessee, well, Nico is in, supposedly they're saying, we think in concussion protocol, but we don't know that. Then there's Notre Dame. You can get whatever opinion you want. Miami's dropped down to 9th or 9-1. Then you've got Alabama, a team that looks too good to be 10. Ole Miss, 11, which might be the best team, and Georgia's still hanging on at 12. Yeah. The teams I marked up as having no chance, and I give everybody a chance of basically It's Penn State. Sorry to say, I don't think Indiana's got one. And then I'm going to say Notre Dame really has no chance. The top three teams look pretty good this week, but I heard Lane Kiffin today on Paul Feinbaum's show talking about this. He thinks it's a bad system. It's cobbled together without much thought, and it's not fair that the 11th and 12th team could be knocked off at any time and not make it. So the question becomes is who could make it? I'm not a real big fan. In fact, I'm not a fan at all of Clay Travis. But he did have some interesting things to say this week about this, and I will, in fact, give you his thoughts. But he says, honest question, does anyone actually think Indiana, BYU, Miami, Notre Dame would beat Alabama, Ole Miss, or Georgia on a neutral field? I don't. These playoff rankings are a joke. I think he makes a point. My answer is I don't think they'd beat them either. That's my thought. Your thoughts on that?
Why? Why wouldn't they beat Alabama? Alabama's already lost.
I think Alabama's
2 times,
but they're a new team. If you watch them play, they're a much better team now.
Yeah, well, maybe so, but week to week, how teams match up with each other, you never know what you're going to get. I would never make a blanket statement that this team would never lose on a neutral field to these other teams. I'm not that confident in any of these teams to say something like that. Ole Miss right now probably looks
supposed to be. Isn't that what we asked for? Have we in fact got a better game, or we have parity? And if we water down college football, you can make that point. Since you only have one team, Oregon, which Ohio State's better than probably we think they are, but depth is a factor for everybody now. Even the great recruiting teams are having a problem with depth. So the question is, do we have a better program? We have a better game now, or worse? Is the game stronger or weaker because of all this, the 12-team playoff?
Well, the one thing that hasn't changed is the Big Ten, to me, is still incredibly weak. I look at a team like Penn State. They've got one loss, and what are they? They're ranked 4th right now. They haven't played anybody. They played Ohio State and lost at home.
Penn State is 4th, and they shouldn't even be in the top 10, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, and that's strictly because of their Big Ten schedule. You threw USC and UCLA. They're no good. And some other teams. Oregon's legit. I'll give them that, but not everybody plays Oregon. Oregon's still playing a West Coast schedule with the exception of a couple of the traditional Big Ten teams. So that's one thing that hasn't changed. And, buddy, I'm sorry, I forgot what your original question was. I got sidetracked on that.
We're just talking about which teams have a chance, which teams don't. It's just all subjective. But more importantly, let's skip on to Florida LSU.
Yeah.
This is I can't say I really hate anybody. I mean, I don't even hate Georgia, but I like their game parts of it. And but I'm telling you, if I was going to hate somebody, LSU might be up there with them because this series is incredibly close. In fact, I think they may be even tied, or probably might be up by 1 because of the games they had to give back, the losses. But it has not gone well for the last 5 seasons for Florida, and it's a team that used to have its way to Florida a long time ago. I've been going to LSU Florida games since the 60s, and I can tell you about some of the unbelievable things that have happened in this series. But this recent Shoegate thing was bizarre. The thing we had, which was 2010, I forgot. That's 4 years old. And that Marco Wilson put a curse on his team by throwing this shoe like he did. And it hasn't been the same since. That was a creepy night. Field goal 57 yards in the fog to win, and it was an unbelievable night. Not a good night for Florida. Seems like something always kind of nutty always happens when Florida plays LSU lately.
Especially when Florida thinks that LSU is there for the taking. I remember when LSU came in several years, I think McElwain was coach, and Florida was playing pretty well, and LSU had lost to a non-Power 5 school. It wasn't a Division I AA, and it seemed like this was a no-brainer. Florida's going to, and Florida ends up losing the game. It might have been the Shoegate game. That was Mullen, though. But something something always strange does happen with LSU. One of my favorite LSU games ever. One of my favorite Florida games ever was when Florida went to LSU. I think it was 2016, and they held them on a goal line stand at the end. Florida won. And after all the miserable trash talking LSU was doing to try and get that game moved from the hurricane, and I remember I was in the week that they moved that game, and there were LSU fans there, and they were just calling Florida people names. They're running and all that. It's like, wait a minute, you people have experience. You should know better than this, and that's all I heard. And if I could have won any game that year in a decade, it would have been that game at LSU, and Florida ended up winning it, and that's probably my favorite victory of all time.
I think that's what I'm talking about. That's when you start getting bitterness, and there is bitterness on both sides now.
Absolutely.
Now you get a rivalry. I mean, I'm thinking about the games that Florida has lost to Georgia that weren't necessarily winnable games, okay? But LSU, they stole. And one year they came in here and didn't throw a pass hardly. Florida couldn't stop the running game at all. Crazy stuff has happened. Including that Shoegate game. I think they need to get that shoe and burn it, that stake, to kill that curse, because ever since that time, it hasn't been the same.
Yeah, Florida looked like they were in line to almost play for a national championship.
They were number 6. They were 6th in the nation, and they got beat on that field goal. It was 53 yards. There was an interception on the defied gravity on the sideline. Ball bounced 3 or 4 times, and it shouldn't have. LSU got back. And amid the fog of that, I've never seen fog hard to feel like that.
Yeah, and it was an LSU team that had no business. They weren't very good that year.
No, they weren't.
And the next year, when Florida went to LSU the year before, the year after, LSU wasn't very good, and Florida lost that game in Baton Rouge. Florida's won some of those games that they shouldn't have won against LSU, but boy, I remember those ones that they should have won and lost.
Yeah, here's a guy who also remembers a few games, has seen them, and will be there on Saturday as well. If I can get my computer to work right here, we're going to go talk to Kevin Brockway of the Gators Sun about the beat this week. At least there's some looks like could be good news with Lagway, although who knows how to read those injury reports. The bad news is that Pup Howard's out and DJ Lagway may be in. Kevin, what do you hear?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're doing all right. Have you heard the latest report on the injury report for?
Yeah. There's some promising news in terms of the fact that, he's continuing to practice. Billy Napier says better each day. Triquez Bridges talked about a throw that he made where he basically said he looked like he was back to the old DJ. And Austin Barber said, he's a gamer doing everything he can to try to get out there. So we'll see. Hamstrings are tricky, as you know, they're day-to-day things. And, you also always run the risk of re-injury. And I'm sure, Kevin Farmer will be involved with sports science at UF, and they'll make their best determination for Saturday. But second straight week, he's questionable on the injury report, and we'll see if he can get out there and give it a go.
Well, he didn't have to run the ball. Just needs to be able to throw it. That would be helpful. Pup Howard being out was kind of a surprising news.
Disappointing, yeah. But I will say this, buddy. I'll tell you who's come on the last couple of weeks and made plays is Miles Graham.
He really has.
He had a sack in that Georgia game.
I agree.
A forced fumble. So maybe this opens up an opportunity for him to get more snaps, to get some more reps. Jaden Robinson, another local kid from Lake City, he's very promising. And of course, you've got Shamar James. So I think you've got a little bit of depth there to withstand it. It's not like monumental linebacker injuries like you have in the secondary, and obviously at the quarterback position where you might be able to withstand a little bit. And maybe Miles and Aaron Childs, another promising young linebacker, they'll both get some more opportunities in this game.
Carlton, I know you've seen Miles Graham. I've seen some plays made that identify guys as being playmakers. That's why I fell in love with Lagway when I did early on. As a guy, difference maker, and so anyway, so guys seem to make plays, which is what they need, Kevin, on defense. Make a play, right?
Exactly. You look at the sack numbers, you look at the interception numbers. One thing, it's kind of interesting because I wrote a column about obviously the play calling and whether Billy's going to give that up. We can get into it later. But if you look at it, Will Harris has been, I think, a nice upgrade in the coaching staff from Corey Raymond. I mean, 9 interceptions. They're up among the leaders of the SEC right now. For the number of injuries that they've had there, the guys that have played throughout the course of the season have shown a pretty good nose for the football. They're doing a lot better job in coverage in that end. And listen, the pass defense has been up and down, and certainly it wasn't very good against Texas. There were a lot of miscommunications. But they are making more plays back there. Yeah. And I think some of that has to do with Harris and his emphasis on turnovers and, tackling too, I guess, is another thing too. And, and missing Asa Turner all year has probably hurt there with the tackling.
Hey, Kevin, hold on 1 second while I just say goodbye to Carlton. Carlton, before you go, tell us about the Ocala, what's going on there. And even though we can't see your lips moving, even though you're talking, great publication you're working on. And you're the entrepreneur who brought this thing to light.
Yeah, well, we're still working on our inaugural issue, shopping it around, but we've got a lot of good stories already in the can, and just excited to bring some literature in magazine form, in actual print you can hold to people, and you don't see much of that anymore, especially at a local level. Trying to revive it, buddy. I know that's close, near and dear to your heart. It's mine too.
It is. It is, and I look forward to seeing it and being part of it. I know it'll be great if you're involved. Of course, you can read Carlson online on the Gator Bait. He's going somewhere this weekend. He's going to go Ivy League on us this weekend.
Yeah, my daughter attends Penn, and they play Harvard this weekend. So my wife and I are going up for homecoming and to see Harvard beat Penn pretty badly, unfortunately. But it'll be fun.
It should be some great football.
It's fun. Watching those Ivy League games is really fun. Fun to watch the games.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I grew up in New York, and you have, Baker Stadium in Columbia, and it's right at the end of Manhattan, and it's just pure football,
Now, my first trip out there was at Columbia when I was working up at the Daily News, and Frank Navarro was the coach. He was a friend of my neighbor's, a really good friend, and we went out a couple of times and sat in the stands and watched the Columbia game, and those halftime shows are unbelievable. I'm telling you, borderline X-rated, So
yeah, the bands there get very
yes, they do. Yeah. Yes, they do. That you have to have imagination. But Carlton, enjoy your trip. All right.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. It's a pleasure as always. Kevin, thank you for the information.
No problem,
Carlton. Thanks, Carlton. All right, Kevin, hold on 1 second before I tell folks about our sponsor here. I've got a lot of football to talk about and some basketball with you, as a matter of fact. This program was brought to you in part by Meldon Law. They won't back down. They are a law firm, although sometimes you see Jeffrey having so much fun, you wonder how he gets their work done. But he's a tremendous Gator fan. He backs it with his support and money, and he sponsors a lot of things. He's the official injury law firm of University of Florida. He's been there since the 1960s, and he goes to as many games as possible. And you should know this. You can score some tickets by going to their website, Meldon Law. They're giving away all kinds of stuff. I mean, he just gave away a trip with tickets. So check them out if you don't want tickets to a game of any kind, basketball, whatever. Meldon Law most likely is giving it away. Meanwhile, if you have a need for an attorney, suggest you check out Meldon Law. They have 4 locations to serve you. One of them is in Ocala, right where I am right now. Also, a new one in Williston. Now, of course, Gainesville, where he started, and Lake City. Meldon Law, they won't back down. Kevin Brockway from the Sun is our special guest. All right, let's start back with Gator football. And let's look at the also top 15 or top 12, if you got them in front of you. We're looking at it tonight saying, okay, which of these teams really have no shot? And the question is college football better or worse? Have they watered it down? Because we don't have any great super teams there. Oregon looks like they're pretty good. Have they made it a better game? Give me your take on, first of all, which teams you think have no chance.
In the 12 in terms of the college football playoff? Yeah, buddy, I mean, I like Indiana. I think Miami has a shot. But and I just think, I think there is so much parity. You know what I mean? I can't tell you a team in the 12 right now that I would say, Tennessee is a team that I wonder the quarterback play, in particular with Nico Iamavella being, his situation right now with the concussion. I just think there's going to be a lot of movement too, buddy. I don't think that this 12 is going to be the set 12 coming December.
I agree with what you say as we speak right now. What's going through the list? 1 Oregon, 2 Ohio State, 3 Texas. I think they're all bona fide contenders. Penn State, you can throw. Indiana's a Cinderella. I don't think they got a shot. BYU, borderline. They played Tennessee, probably no, with Nico hurt. Notre Dame, in my opinion, has done. Miami, probably not. Alabama, Ole Miss, and Georgia may be too far down, but they're awfully good football teams. Now, I wouldn't throw it.
Exactly. I will say, though, it is trending, right? Because we saw last year in the Final Four. I mean, Alabama was the only SEC team to make it. They lost to Michigan. So, I mean, what does that tell you? Is the Big Ten catching up to the SEC a little bit or not? And is the SEC's parity this year another sign that maybe the conference is not as strong as it has been in past years? I'm wondering that, and how that will play out. I'm fascinated by that. And I'm fascinated to see, if the Big Ten can keep its momentum from last year, having Michigan as the national champions. And of course, Washington, a team that, but I'll tell you what, coming back from Austin and being that Texas team looks awfully good. They look really good. And I know they lost to Georgia at home, but with Sarkisian calling the plays, some of the skill positions they have, Quinn Ewers, they look like a really, really well-oiled team. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them in Atlanta. And it would be something if they won it their first year in the league. But I think Sark has that program going really well, and they look rock out. And by the way, Isaiah Bond, guy that Dan Mullen commitment, right? That Billy can close the deal on. And look at what he's doing at Texas, just scoring touchdowns all over the place.
The one that got away again. It seems like that song plays a lot. All right, so size it up for me right now. It's hard to know. Injuries can be used as an excuse. You have that. So, we have a lot of injuries. Well, everybody says injuries, but it does seem like they have had more than their fair share.
Well, take a look. LSU lost Harold Perkins, obviously their best defensive player of the year, and that's hurt them. And that probably showed on the field in that loss to Alabama for sure. But I think, some of it is an indictment on the depth. You got to build the depth, I think. And Billy's had 3 years to build the depth, but it's still young depth. And you got to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. Like we said, we talked about, Miles Graham making plays before, but he's a true freshman. DJ Lagway, your backup quarterback, is a true freshman. So I think there's something to be said for allowing that depth to mature a little bit. And Billy obviously getting the vote of confidence in that 4th year, that adds another layer to that. Now, what you hope is that you don't lose a bunch of guys to transfer portal again, like you did last year. Or impact guys like Trevor Etienne. You hope that a guy like Trey Wilson stays, I think, also. So that you can continue to pad and build that depth. But I think this opens up some opportunities for Aiden Mizell. I think it opens up opportunity for him. Obviously, this back stretch of the season, like I said before, Miles Graham with some of the injuries on the defense, even a guy like Cormani McLean, you can see a little bit more of him. He really had his struggles in that Texas game.
He had a burn a couple of times.
Yeah,
fell down.
He got turned around. Yeah, a few times, fell down a few times. So, yeah, he's, like I said, there's but at this point of the season, I think you just try to let some of the young guys play and see what they can do.
The one thing, and I don't know if he'll have the time to do this, I think what Billy's trying to tell us, it's a long game. There are no quick fixes. There's not going to be – that's why I'm not in favor of firing Billy and bringing in a new coach. I don't have the confidence in any one coach. Maybe Lane Kiffin, I don't know, could come in and turn it around that fast. And this day and age, the way things are done, it takes longer. And I think Billy deserves another chance. And if he didn't get it done early on, if he goes 2-5 next year, he'll be out. He'll be gone. And he should be. But I think they're seeing, I don't know, have you seen improvement? If you have seen it, where have you seen it? And how do you think the coaching has been, Kevin?
I think it's been up and down. I mean, you still look at some of the sideline mistakes are happening. Obviously the Tennessee game, you look back at that. But I do think that you're seeing a little bit of, I think we saw a little bit of improvement on defense before the Texas game. Just consistency across the board. Offensive line play, you've seen improvement. It looks more like the offensive line from year one. They're forcing more turnovers on defense. They're making more plays on defense. Pass rush has been a little better this year compared to last year. So, I mean, if you're looking for some positives, you can find it there. The running game, I think, with Jaden Baugh and Jacoby Jackson has been a really nice find. They haven't really missed too much of a beat, even losing ETN in that regard. And Montrell Johnson's been banged up most of the year. So you've had some good things there. So you've had some moments, and DK and Badger were nice additions. It's just the consistency, though, across the board has not been there, and I think that's probably what's frustrated Billy and the coaching staff more than anything is the fact that, being able to finish close games, you're right there with Tennessee, you're right there with Georgia, and you're unable to finish. I think that's, been a prevailing theme, throughout Billy's tenure. I mean, 2-14 against ranked teams is not good, buddy. And that's something that's going to have to, flip the script a little bit, in year 4 for him to keep his job for sure.
Kevin Brockway, Gainesville Sun, is our special guest. He covers everything, particularly basketball, football. He's a really good basketball reporter. We've had an unusual thing happen. It's hard to know how to report that story. Todd Golden is in a bit of a mess. No matter how it comes out, it can't be good. It seems like some of the damage has been done as best you can without knowing any more, because it's not something they give you a packet on and say, here's the latest story. Where do you think that stands? How do you feel about Golden? I know you were at the basketball game of the night, and he did not get booed, I understand, although I wouldn't put too much in that. So update the basketball situation. Tell me about Todd Golden, and what are you hearing, and what do you think?
Well, I think it's important to let due process play out. I mean, we can go back to Antonio Callaway, right, in 2016 with the Title IX investigation. That took a number of months. He was cleared. So we'll see what happens with regards to Todd. I mean, we did ask him about the allegations. He stood by his statement on social media, which is he's engaged in a defamation lawyer, but he's not going to comment on the specifics of the investigation, and he's cooperating with it. And Monday night, the one question that I had, buddy, was, what would be your message to women fans because of the allegations? Because the fact that it, certainly smacked at the allegations, smack at just a general disrespect towards women. And his response was, hey, let due process play out and, stick with us. And it seems like, David Whitley, my colleague, kind of did a fan canvas. And I think that fans are kind of in wait and see mode. I think they're taking my tack on it, and that these are allegations, but, there is due process involved, and he deserves to go through the process before he make a final determination on what kind of person he is. But I can tell you that, these allegations are serious and they are troubling, and they will be used as ammunition in opposing gyms, especially in the SEC. It's going to be a year full of distractions. And the one thing I'll say is that the team Monday night did not play distracted at all. I thought they played really well and really focused, and they seemed to be maybe galvanizing a little bit.
I want to get into that a little deeper basketball, but let me just first do this commercial. My friends at Titan MRI,
sure.
We expect Peek-Wilbur to join us in a moment. I want to talk hoops with Kevin about the talk basketball, which is hard to do these days.
Sure.
There's always some issue. I want to tell you about Titan MRI, a place you need to know about if you need at any time an MRI, and who doesn't at some point. Never an opportune time when it happens, but you have to have it. You have no choice. You dread having to go down and wait a day or going down to a place to get in a small tube somewhere, and you get claustrophobic. And first of all, you have to get out, take off work to do it. It's really inconvenient. One thing Titan MRI has done is they made it better for you and easier for you to get that MRI. They will make an appointment for you at night or the weekends or on your off hours so you cannot miss work, if that's one thing. Secondly, maybe you don't have insurance. Sometimes you lose it. Well, they have a deal set up for your cash or your card where it's not going to make you mortgage your house to pay the bill. You can take your cash, your card, and pay for your MRI. And then, of course, they want to make sure that this is a good experience for you. I suggest you go to the website, Titan MRI, and check them out. And next time you need an MRI, that's the place you should try, TitanMRI.com. Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun is our special guest tonight. We talked about football. There's probably a lot we can still talk about. Great rivalry, in my opinion, is becoming maybe right there with Georgia in terms of a rival. We'll hope that on the whole. Let's talk about basketball and the quality of play. Aside from the issues that Todd Gurley's deal with, they got some horses there. They were up to, I think, 15 or 16 ranked. They look like a good basketball team if they get past this issue, which they may or may not. Talk to me about basketball and the potential of this team.
Yeah, I like what Todd did in the transfer portal in terms of replenishing, particularly in the front court. This kid, Sam Alexis, looks pretty solid. He's done a nice job. He's a good post scorer, tough, rebounds, does some good things. Ruben Chinyelu, a little raw around the basket, although he was much better finishing in the Grambling game. He's 7 of 8. And 7'8" wingspan, really good rim protector. I think he's going to be fine there too. Alex Condon looks like he's taking a step forward. Thomas Houck. So I really like the front court. Will Richard looks a lot more athletic this year. He's being disruptive in the passing lanes, getting steals, getting down court, dunking the ball. So he's not just a 3-point shooter this year. He's become a more, I think, well-rounded player in that way. And I think the big question is Walter Clayton at the point. And, Clayton had that explosive first game against USF where he scored 29. And then he followed that up by 9 and 7 assists against Jacksonville. So he showed you a little bit of both, that he could be a scoring point guard and he could be a distributor. He's keeping the turnovers at a minimum. But, they haven't seen that high-level competition yet where someone's going to be really in your grill. And that's going to be, I think, a big question for me is how he continues to handle the point guard position. And Denzel Aberdeen has spelled him some as well. But, that's going to be I think the big question mark. And they look like they're improving defensively. They haven't hit a lot of threes yet either from a percentage standpoint. But I think that will come. They have too many good perimeter shooters not for that to happen. I mean, Elijah Martin, Walter Clayton, and, Will Richard all have pretty proven track records there. So I think you will see that. And, maybe they're saving him for a big game. You never know.
Well, first of all, I've always loved Denzel Aberdeen ever since I heard his name the first time. He's been one of my guys. Love that name. But you have to ask the question, is Clayton really a point guard? I don't know. Maybe not. Would he be better at being a 2 guard if they have a point guard there? And is that position going to – I mean, he can get the ball inside, he can shoot the ball, but is he the ideal guy to be a point guard?
Yeah, listen, I go back to Anthony Roberson 20 years ago. Scoring points can be a really big weapon. Now, I would say Roberson was probably a better, ball handler and passer than Walter is, but he was probably more complete. But when you have Walter at that position, you do have that threat of a guy coming down the floor in transition and just popping one. And that can be quite the weapon. But, I do think if he struggles at times that you will see Denzel come in and spell him and then they'll move him off the ball. And they also have this kid, Urban Klasvar, who's not eligible.
What's the deal?
Yet.
I keep reading. Eligible, not eligible,
Yeah.
etc.
He played for a professional team in Spain, so there's a little bit of a hold up there with regards to that, like how he, kind of the Real Madrid shit. So there's questions about his amateurism, which in 2024 in this day and age, you're thinking with all the NIL and stuff. But Todd Golden has advocated for him, says he feels like he deserves to play. But he's another guy, and they also have Cages Klubakis, another guy who can play a little bit of point as well. So, but I think it'll mainly be, Denzel and Will and Walter, at that position, and they'll be alternating, and you could see Walter some off the ball and bring in Denzel, and then spell a guy like Elijah Barton or Will Richards. So I think that's how they're going to handle it.
Kevin Brockway, really good basketball and football reporter, good report all the way around. Talk to me about the SEC. How's it stacking up? There's change. Obviously, the Arkansas program is a different situation with Calipari. Who are the dogs? Who are the teams that Florida has to beat? And can Florida, given they can deal with their off-court issues, can Florida compete at that level?
Well, hey, Kentucky had a pretty nice win last night, right? They beat Duke. I mean, it's a huge win for Mark Pope. I thought Mark Pope was a really nice hire for Kentucky in that situation. You bring back a guy, the Pitino lineage. He was on the national championship team in 1996. I think under Calipari, there was a lot of frustration up there in Big Blue Nation that, they were getting away from the pride in the front of the jersey, and Pope has brought that back in terms of, that importance as opposed to compared to the back of the jersey and Calipari's NBA messaging. So he and to get that kind of signature win early in his tenure is something. And Florida, goes there. They go to Rupp to start the SEC schedule. So don't count out Kentucky. They're always going to be there, right? But Alabama, with Mark Sears back and, they added the big kid from Rutgers, Cliff Umari, who's a guy that's going to be a really good rim protector for them. He was, pretty good in the Big Ten as well with Rutgers. And they're going to be tough. Auburn is going to be tough. They had a big win against Houston over the weekend, with Johnny Broome back. But I think Florida could be, among the top 4 teams in the country, in the conference. I think Arkansas is a little overrated just because of the Calipari hype. But we will, we'll see how it plays out.
Who you got? 1, 2, 3, and 4. We'll put Florida at 4, okay?
For the SEC? I had Florida at 3. I had Alabama, Auburn, Florida, and I'll say Kentucky 4.
Okay. Now we got some all season. We got some tournaments coming up this fall. We always have those usual. What tournaments does Florida play in, and what can we find out about, and where they play?
We know Florida is going to be in Disney over Thanksgiving weekend. They're actually going to play on Thanksgiving. They're playing Wake Forest. So obviously a rematch of the ACC SEC last year, which didn't go well for Florida because they went up to Wake and they lost that game. And then after that, the Friday game, they would play either the winner or the loser of the Minnesota-Wichita State game. And of course, Wichita State is, a team that was coached by the former Oral Roberts coach. His name escapes me, but the one that beat Mike White in the NCAA tournament in 2021. He's now Wichita State. Paul Mills, yeah. So he's a guy that obviously he's trying to turn that program around at Wichita State. So that could be an interesting. Or if they face Minnesota in the finals, it would be that Friday. So that's kind of their big thing. And then of course they're also in the Jumpman Classic this year. They got North Carolina in Charlotte, which is pretty much going to be like a road game, and that will be the big test. And they've got Virginia here for ACC, SEC as well. Obviously Virginia, Tony Bennett resigning right before the start of the season. They could be in a situation too where they're in a little bit of flux with an interim coach.
Yeah, Kevin Brockway is our special guest tonight. If you haven't read him in the Gainesville Sun, we had a debate I wouldn't say a debate, discussion last night on the program with the other guys that were on talk about Florida being able to get the kind of coach that they need to get in football if Billy's not the guy, and whether or not the brand has been tarnished. And someone said, well, nobody wants to coach here now anymore, because of the message. And somebody, I believe Lauren Bennett, says, are you kidding me? This brand is still super strong around the country. You don't understand. A lot of people would kill the coach in Florida. So you are a New Yorker who went to Miami and then came, and you see maybe a little less John than others. And so
thanks for outing me there.
I think it's an advantage. You look at it a different way. Give me your take on what I just said to you about what they.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because my godson used to come to all the basketball games, when I was, covering basketball and stuff in the Northeast. And you would be surprised the number of Gator fans in the Northeast. I actually turned him into a Gator fan because he used to, come to all the tournaments that I would cover if they were in Atlantic City back in the day of Billy Donovan and stuff. Yeah, no, there's there are large Gator contingents throughout the country. When I was in Indiana, when I was working there, they had a Gator club in Indianapolis. So, I mean, they're all over the place. You had Denver.
It's a national brand. His brand is not a
it is a national brand, yeah. So there are opportunities. Certainly, the right guy can turn this thing around. I mean, if Kurt Signetti can turn around Indiana football in 1 year, somebody can come in here and do it. But it takes a special person, I think, and someone that's going to be strong-minded and someone that's going to come in here and adapt to, certainly the ways of, the current ways. And I think, listen, I think there are a lot of reasons for that for Florida. One of my theories, buddy, is the fact that, for so many years, there was a culture of compliance here, right? In terms of doing it the right way, doing the right thing. And then you have this NIL era that completely flips that on its lid, right? And maybe it's taken a while for some of the boosters to come around and get used to the new way of thinking. And maybe that's why they're behind on NIL in terms of funding, in terms of listen, they're raising a lot of money, but you have to put it in perspective of, are they raising more money than Tennessee? Are they raising more money than Georgia? Are they raising more money than Ohio State? I think that's the big question. It's all, apples and, it's got to be compared to the arena that you're dealing with.
We can't look at the box score and find out. Allie Peek-Wilbur knows that. She joins the program tonight. She was on another interview. Couldn't get off of it.
Yeah, so sorry. He was late hopping in, and it was my live, and so it's today.
I understand this happens. Say good evening to Kevin.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Hi, Allie. I saw your pictures in Austin. Looked like you guys had a good time.
Great time. Outside of the score, it was a really fun trip.
I know it was a nice atmosphere. They're very friendly there.
Allie, I'm sure you know by now that they've lost Pup Howard for this game. Another injury. Kevin and I were talking about how injuries can be a crutch that people lean on when things don't go well. But Billy Napier's had more than his fair share. Seems like every week is something. Still, if he can get DJ Lagway, things could be competitive. Give us your thoughts on that. How bad is the loss of Pup Howard?
I mean, it's big. I think he's been our most consistent linebacker this year. I think he's been a disruptor and he's made the defense better. So, yeah, I think that's a huge loss. And then I think you couple that with the fact that the secondary has been banged up and, it presents a problem. And, when we talk about last week's game in Austin, I think we all are so quick to talk about Aiden Werner and the offense being anemic. But in reality, the defense was actually putrid. We gave up almost 10 yards of play. And so I don't know that it matters who your quarterback is at all or who's playing on offense if your defense can't play better. And so not having, and we had Pup Howard when that was going on. So not having him this week when LSU is going to rely pretty much solely on the pass and our secondary needs some support from those linebackers. It's not great.
Well, I think Kevin had a good point. There are some young players. One of them is Miles Graham.
Yeah.
You identify him as a playmaker.
Yeah.
I love to see guys who can make plays. That's why I love Lagway so much, whatever. And it's apparent to me right away, and I'm not that good at judging talent, that Miles Graham is ready.
Yeah.
And maybe he does plug in there and make 12 tackles. And Kevin had a suggestion. Others were behind him. I get a chance. Kevin, share that thought you had.
About what?
About the guys behind him.
The guys behind Miles Graham?
Behind Pup Howard.
Oh yeah, Jaden Robinson, another guy. Yeah, no, there's some guys there. I will say this about the defense too in the Texas game. I was on Shane's podcast earlier in the week, and Shane was discussing about two best play callers he thinks of right now in college football. One, Steve Sarkisian, the other one, Lane Kiffin, who Florida is going to see in a couple of weeks. So I think Steve Sarkisian kind of made Florida's defense look a little foolish in some of those calls. That call the tight end, right? Gunnar Helm, like right across the middle where he, so I do think that, buddy, there's something to be said for that. Also, the turnovers didn't help created some short
There
fields
was
and so forth.
it felt like, and I mean, you look at time of possession and you can see
Yeah.
Florida had the ball more, but that is truly like the way it felt like sitting in the stands is like, all right, decently pedestrian offense. Oh, well, totally got behind us. Huge explosive play. Didn't see that coming. And like it was that on repeat every series. They were not on the field that often on offense because they would just figure out a way to get somebody so insanely open, and then it would be over and it was a touchdown. And then we'd be back on offense. And our defense absolutely got outcoached, got surprised. And I think this is what you're seeing, at least from the secondary, when you maybe don't recruit at the clip that you need to be really competitive at the top of this conference, because it shouldn't be that there's such a huge drop off between your first string and your second string DBs. And there is right now at UF, and but there's not at places like Texas or Alabama or Georgia. Even Ole Miss is getting into that conversation right now where there's just so much depth. And I think that's part of why Florida is suffering right now. Other teams have the same injuries or similar numbers of injuries, but they have better depth. And that's
Allie, I'm with you. And I asked Billy about that post game about what this says about the depth of the program. And he was discussing the fact that, the glut of the injuries are in the secondary and at the quarterback position. That's why you have third teamers at those spots. But you know who the third teamer at quarterback at Ole Miss is? It's Austin Simmons or Walker Howard, right?
Well,
those are pretty good guys. And Billy's had 3 years.
I
to
do
stack that
give a
position,
little bit more grace at quarterback than any other position, because 9 times out of 10, when you get to your third string guy at quarterback, there is a massive drop off there. But there is no excuse for the kind of drop offs that Florida's seeing in the secondary with injuries. That does speak to what you've done recruiting wise. I saw this stat over the weekend that was fascinating, and it talked about the 2022, 2023, and 2024 signing classes for Florida, for Texas, and for Georgia, and the percentage of which were blue chips. And, Georgia and Texas are anywhere between 70 and 80% blue chips in those 3 classes. And Florida's hovering around the 50s in those 3 classes. And basically that's the difference. That is where, when you've stacked 3 classes in a row of blue chip guys, you can have 7 injuries on defense and still figure out how to win a game. But Billy Napier was brought in because he was a genius recruiter, right? And that's what we were sold. And I think what we're seeing is we aren't there yet from the depth perspective.
Yeah. And the classes are 12, 13 in that neighborhood. Georgia and Texas are top 5. So that's where,
Let me just differ with you just a little bit here, because I know everybody says recruiting. That's it. That's how Urban won. Steve didn't win that way. He had a lot of players when he got here. But I think the new thing is, again, this is all hypothetical. Go buy your team. And if you had this money, allegedly at $27 million, they were going to have to pay out, and you don't have an ideal candidate, maybe you consider, Lane an ideal candidate, I don't know, and you're going to have to fork out, $10 million a year or more for a coach for 4 years, and it's going to cost you. End up costing you. I keep hearing a figure of $60-70 million to clean the slate. Then if you take the same dollars and apply them and say, go identify 15 players, the best players you can get for your money. You won't get the whole 27 million because it is different money. But say you can take Jimmy Sexton, who's a smart guy, went to Florida and said, look, we don't need the 26 million buyout. We'll take 20 or we'll take 18. And that way, if he goes, that means that you got, this other money to go spend on getting players and building teams in the portal, because he's not going to be able to make it up in recruiting. He's got to have experienced players. So get your money, get your bag, and go out and start signing players in the transfer portal. That's one theory. You can disagree or agree. Allie, starting with you.
I think that's what you got to try and do right now, because that's the position you're in. But I think the transfer portal is so hit or miss. Look at Florida State. They were awesome at it a year ago, and they went undefeated in the regular season. The same coaching staff doing the same evaluating completely missed on their transfer portal class this year. And the results are that they've won one game. So we're still relying on a chance at this point. Why someone enters the transfer portal is, potentially playing time, their head coach changed, so the position that they, came to play might have changed, or we're buying that they're a better player and you're a better evaluator of talent than the coach that recruited them to come there originally. And all of those things are just such gambles. I think it's the position we're in now, right? Like they're sitting with the 50th ranked recruiting class right now. They have got to get some hits in the transfer portal if they're going to win. But I think that shouldn't be your every year strategy. I think it's 10 times more risky than developing high school talent. But I think it's what we got to do this year because it's the option we have left.
First of all, you gamble on a coach when you put that money out there. Secondly, you gamble on recruits when you don't know for sure they're going to make it. And then you're gambling on your transfer portal. Yeah. I don't say you have to build an entire team full of transfer portal players. If you got your core group and your quarterback is a recruit and your key leaders, you got enough of those core recruits, then you fill in with the best.
But that's also what we tried to do last year, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be work out every time or there's an ideal science to it. But at this point in time, it's the hand that Billy's got.
For sure. It's what you do.
For sure. Okay. Buddy, you took off your hat. Also, to Allie's point, I used to say this in basketball. I said for every Dorian Finney-Smith, there's a John Horford, right? It's a 50-50 proposition with transfers. You just it's kind of like the Forrest Gump line. It's like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to necessarily get. This staff, and I've pointed this out, proven this year notwithstanding, because I think Grayson Howard and George Gums have certainly been okay. But if you look at the track record of this staff, they seem to have a better eye for offensive transfer portal talent than they do for defensive transfer portal talent, which is one of the reasons why the defense is in the state that it's in. I mean, we could go over some specific guys. They brought in Deuce Spurlock from Michigan, RJ Moat. Some of the guys they brought in just haven't panned out, haven't performed. And it seems like the preponderance is more on the defensive side than the offensive side. So you can have this money, buddy, but you've got to be able to, identify, evaluate, develop. And look, on the offensive side, I think they've done pretty well. I mean, Ricky Pearsall has been a nice receiver. This running back, they got Jacoby Jackson from JUCO. This turned out to be a real diamond in the rough. Shamir Dike and Elijah Badger have turned out to be pretty good, receivers as well. But it seems like on the defensive side, that's where they've had a lot of misevaluations, and that's an area where they've got to improve. I think this year in order to make this.
The jury's still out on Billy. Now we'll round out the program with this: is he the guy? And we don't know that yet. But what choices do we have? Mm-hmm. Miss or hit on Billy, Allie?
Miss or hit on him being successful overall?
What you think of so far in the projection?
I think a miss. I think we've talked about this a million times. I think Billy is a really good person. I think I'm looking at a 1-10 record against rivals. I think, we're looking at the worst winning percentage of any head coach in modern college football era for the University of Florida. And, hey, maybe we come out and we win the next 3 games, and maybe I have a different opinion when we talk in 3 weeks. But as of right now, I don't know how the numbers tell you anything other than a miss.
Fair enough. Kevin?
Allie, I mentioned earlier, 2-14 against ranked opponents too. Let's not forget that. In terms of along with the rivals. Yeah, it's been it's been tough sledding for him at times. I think he and his staff, they've looked over their head a lot through the first 3 years. Will it change in year 4? Will he get enough talent to overcome, some of the sideline bumblings and some of the things we've seen, and, some of the imprecise play on special teams, certainly that, was costly in the Georgia game. We'll see. I mean, people were knocking on Mario Cristobal at Miami for the timeout snafu, and then this year they get Cam Ward, and Mario looks a little bit more like a genius. Although I guess he did have some bumbles in that Georgia Tech game they were referring to also with timeouts. But so I think this will be obviously a crucial year 4. But I say give him a chance, one more season with a healthy DJ Lagway, and strength and conditioning too. I think they got to do something there, or has Billy really built a roster that can withstand a full SEC season? I think that's a big question mark. And as this team continues to get more physically mature, I think that's going to be important going forward. He's because this is two Novembers in a row where you have a bare bones team at the back.
The interesting thing about strength and conditioning for me, and injuries notwithstanding, because I do have questions about is something you're doing in the strength and conditioning leading to these injuries this late in the season. But everybody that I talked to when we switched strength and conditioning staffs over the summer essentially said, it's kind of a bummer this happened before year 3 because we probably won't get to actually see this strength and conditioning program come to fruition because it takes at least a year for these guys to see the results of the new system. Well, we're getting a year 4. Which means, so maybe we are going to get to see the benefits of this. But I do wonder if we just haven't gotten to that point yet where we're going to see what these changes we did over the summer actually do. I think it was too little too late to change this summer to expect it to, affect the outcome of this season. So
good point. And listen, they still are mostly playing freshmen and sophomores, and along with a few juniors. So there's something to be said for just the overall physical maturity of a 19 or 20-year-old versus a 21 and
whatever that 500 pounds of fat they lost is supposed to be so good. I've never heard much about that.
Well, they haven't looked winded in their defense, so they just
the great baseball player, the late Rod Beck used to say, "You can't pull fat." Yeah. That was his.
By the way, not a great weekend for football in the state of Florida last week. I think with the pro teams and college teams were 1-13, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Dolphins had won. They'd about 0 for the weekend. Huh?
Brutal.
Yeah.
And that was a tough loss for. Now I can say it. Now that you outed me, my Hurricanes. I mean, if they lose one more, then they'll be out of the college football playoff picture for good. So you have no margin for error now.
All right, guys, great job. Thanks, Ali, for joining. I know you had a tough night getting you through your other interview. Appreciate you making an effort to be here. Kevin, great job, man. You did a great job. Thank you. Appreciate you very much. Read him in the Gainesville Sun. Watch Allie's podcast, Peek of the Gators, and she is a very popular up-and-coming. I'll say one day, I used to work for Allie a long time ago. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much. All right.
Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Take care.
All right, folks, I'll wrap up the program tonight here from the Blue Heron in Ocala. It's a nice place. If you ever have a chance to eat a bed and breakfast, I recommend it. So we're back tomorrow night to wrap up the week. And then, of course, the game on Saturday. We'll be talking to you about that. So we'll remind you about our good friends at Renstar Medical Research, not too far from here. I was down in Ocala today for a special event for James Melton, one of the true superstars of show business from right here in Ocala. It was proclaimed by the mayor, Ben Marciano, and my friend Carswell Ponder, Brad Rogers, all put on a nice event at the Marion Theater, a place that I love. And they recognize him with one of the plaques in the sidewalk, James Melton, way long past due. So that was fun. Right around the corner there, downtown, is Renstar Medical Research. They support this community, support our health. They want you to know that if you would like to take part in their clinical trials, these are used to get better information, better medication for you. And they do these clinical research things several times a year. You have an opportunity to join if you want to go to redstar.net and see which ones are ongoing. If you can sign up for it, it'd be helpful to them, helpful to you. You'll get some special investigational medicine you'll get to try. And that information will be used to better help us here in our town to treat our illnesses with the proper medication. Renstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to health questions of today. Have a great night, folks. We're back again, as I said, tomorrow night. Be right here. And thanks again to our guest tonight, Allie, of course, you saw, Kevin, and early in the program, the good man, Carlton Reese, who, if you're not reading him in Gator Bait, you're missing out. Highly recommend that you do. Good night. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.